We are almost through one complete season of Pete DeBoer in Dallas. And on today's episode, we'll be going back in time to compare my feelings on the Pete DeBoer hire back in June and comparing them to how myself and many other Stars fans feel about him now. We'll be talking about this and more on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. Welcome back to the Locked On Stars podcast, the only daily podcast covering the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Dane Lewis, your local expert on all things Dallas Stars hockey, coming to you on this Thursday, March 30th. And whether this is your first time here or you are a recurring listener of the show, thank you for stopping by and making Locked On Stars your first listen every single day. Remember to follow and subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch at. We're always free and available no matter where you choose to tune into the show. And with the Stars being off today, wanted to take a little bit of time to do some reflection, some self-reflection, if you will. I'm sure many of you have seen, people that follow the NHL closely. Former Dallas Stars head coach Rick Bowness, current Winnipeg Jets head coach, has been very vocal lately with some criticisms of his team. His name has been at the forefront of many different media headlines and stories and things of that nature, as the Winnipeg Jets have been spiraling a bit over the past few weeks. At one point, they were potentially set to win the Central Division or at least finish somewhere in the top three. But now they find themselves on the bubble of a wild card spot and in a place where they could potentially be leapfrogged by either the Calgary Flames or the Nashville Predators, and they could find themselves on the outside looking in if they're not careful. But a lot of turmoil, it seems, in Winnipeg, and Pete DeBoer under quite a bit of criticism, it seems, and making some pretty big headlines, which we know that he's very capable of in terms of the way he talks about his players and things like that. And it's a situation that makes me very glad that the Stars are under the leadership of Pete DeBoer. Again, we all know how I felt about Rick Bowness. I think he's a great guy. I think that he's well respected. He's earned that respect, but not necessarily the coach that the Dallas Stars needed. It felt necessary to move on from him in the summer and then bring in someone new. And Pete DeBoer has done an excellent job. He has the team in a spot to not just win the Central Division, but potentially go on a extended playoff run. It seems like the players really like him. Everyone seems to have bought in to his system on the ice, but then also in the locker room, it seems like the team chemistry is in a very good spot, especially this late in the season. I think that's a very good thing. And the team overall just seems to be in a very good place. However, this is not always the way that I've felt about Pete DeBoer. I once was a Pete DeBoer skeptic, if you will, especially those of you who have been listening for a long time know that I said some pretty out there things when the Stars hired him back in June. So I actually went back and checked out some clips from the episode that came out. This episode came out on June 21st, 2022. And I had some pretty bad takes, and I won't play all of them for you on this episode because we don't have enough time for that. But there were certainly some that, looking back, I was foolish. And this is an opportunity for me to hold myself accountable and remind you all that I'm not perfect and I'm not always going to be correct in my assumptions. But let's go ahead and flash back to June and hear old me's thoughts on the hiring of Pete DeBoer. This is a move for me personally that I don't think the word for me is upset or angry. I think I'm just disappointed and underwhelmed by this move. You know, the Dallas Stars were and still are in desperate need of a huge change for the offense for the team. Obviously, the defense has been the identity for quite some time, so there's a need to uphold that identity and continue to produce strong defensive-minded teams. But I think at the end of the day, what the Dallas Stars were maybe in need of was a man who could come in, run the team, turn the offense around, obviously, But there was obviously, I think, a need for some, game-changing culture for this seemingly new era of Dallas Stars hockey. We talk about it all the time with these new prospects coming up throughout the organization. Obviously, some of the better young players in this organization are on the NHL roster now, and there's just kind of this sense that we are stepping into this new era of Dallas Stars hockey where Seguin and Ben are no longer the front focus of this organization. It's Robertson, it's Hintz, it's Ottinger. And with that, I think the Stars were in need of a new coach who could come in and help kind of set the bar and set this new standard for excellence here in Dallas, because this is a town that, even though it might not be considered a hockey town, that there's a lot of pride within this fan base and high expectations every season for the Stars team to be competitive and not just to make the playoffs or win a couple playoff series every season, but to eventually win the Stanley Cup. But again, cannot harp on this enough, how just bland and safe of a pick this appears to be. I mean, it's like the Stars are, riding bikes with other teams in the NHL. Every team in the NHL is represented by a little kid riding a bike, and the Stars have had their training wheels on. And instead of, looking to take the training wheels off and take a risk and try to, speed things up, they keep the training wheels on and they keep playing it safe. And they go with the name of a coach who's been around the league for a while, who obviously does have some success. This is not a bad coach necessarily in every aspect of what being a coach requires. But when you talk about training wheels, I mean, you're not going to go as fast. You're not going to be able to keep up with some of the other kids that are riding their bikes. You're not going to be able to keep up with some of these other organizations who are making big moves in the coaching position, who are going out and getting big name free agents or making big trades for big pieces. And obviously the Stars are paying guys like Seguin and Ben quite a bit of money that can hinder some of those movements. Of course, not everything has been perfect during Pete DeBoer's time here in Dallas, but we can't deny that this really has overall been a successful season. And there's, again, so much more in that episode where I go on to say things like the Stars were playing it safe. The front office really just didn't know what they were doing, and they were chasing a big name, one of the biggest names on the market in terms of new head coaching hires, and so many different things that just aged horribly, aged like milk. And I'm very glad to be wrong. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that somewhere in the episode as well, that I would love to be proven wrong and love for Pete DeBoer to have a great amount of success, not just in his first season, but however long he stays in Dallas as the head coach of the Stars. And I think, we're almost a full year in terms of a regular season. And so far, I think the signs are pretty promising, as the team is slated to finish higher at the end of this season than where they were last season. In my eyes, it's stressful to be fighting for the top spot in the Central Division, and kind of scary to think about what might happen if the Stars get that 3 seed. But I would much rather be in a battle for the 1 through 3 spots than being where their team was last year. A year ago today, we didn't even know if the Stars were going to make the postseason. We knew it was likely, but we knew it was also going to be an uphill battle. And I would much rather be pretty much locked into a playoff spot, unsure of what seed we might get, than fearful that we might not even make the postseason. And so Pete DeBoer, again, hasn't been perfect. No coach has a perfect first year. But given the circumstances and given the skepticism that me and I'm sure others shared with this hiring, it seems like things have gone very, very well. And there's reason for hope for the future, because Pete DeBoer has taken a lot of the things I was concerned about and flipped those upside down and come out and kind of rejuvenated this Stars team and done a lot of things and taken this team to new places that they haven't been in quite some time. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll take a deep dive into some of the changes that have happened with this team since Pete DeBoer's arrival, and why it again should spark hope and optimism for Stars fans for years to come. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you've got to try Built Bar. What makes Built Bar taste so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And I'm not quite sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they're healthy for you, with only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get your own box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or the coconut puffs. So many unbelievably delicious flavors, and you can find more information at built.com. I want to thank you again for making the Locked On Stars podcast your first listen of the day, continuing to reflect on this first season for Stars coach Pete DeBoer, or it's really almost at its conclusion, but only a small handful of games left in the regular season. And there's still plenty of story to be told. We're really hopefully nowhere near the end of the Dallas Stars 2022-2023 campaign. But all of the signs so far, like I said last segment, are pointing to promise and hope in terms of Pete DeBoer's first go-around here in Texas. For starters, it all starts on offense. The offense has found new life. The Dallas Stars are top 10 in goals scored this season. They were 21st last season, and they, of course, did make the playoffs, but that was really on the back of good goaltending and good defense, and not necessarily because of the offense. And while the goaltending certainly has been solid this season, and the defense, for the most part, has been serviceable, the offense has really been the story for the Stars this season. The power play is in the top half of the league, but then if you even look at the penalty kill, it's also been incredible. The Stars have been able to stay in games because of good defense, good penalty killing, and good goaltending, but they've been able to win a lot more games by decisive margins because of a top 10 offense, because of the play of guys like Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston coming in and scoring 20-plus goals in his rookie campaign. Jamie Benn has been revitalized and having his best year since 2018. And it's Pete DeBoer and even the guys he brought alongside to coach with him, Elaine Nazardine and Steve Spott in particular. I think they also deserve a good amount of credit as well for the success this season, because the Stars, while they might not be exceptional at one particular thing, I feel like they're very, very solid in just about every aspect of the game, with a few miscues here and there, as you would expect with any professional sports team across really any sport. But I mean, you again just look at a player-by-player basis, and you're getting production from several different guys this season that you weren't getting consistently last year. We know Jason Robertson was a good goal scorer. He scores 41 last year, and he's already matched that again this year. So we know how good he is, but, you know, he's still thriving under DeBoer's system. The top line, Pavelski, Rope, Hintz, Robertson, still all doing their thing. But now it's that depth scoring too. We've seen Jamie Benn, like I said, having the Renaissance type season. We've seen a rookie in Wyatt Johnston flourish. And even Tyler Seguin, when he's been healthy and equipped with adequate line mates, has also looked very, very sharp. And even Miro Heiskanen, he's now reaching new career highs in just about every statistical category. It's been refreshing to see the Dallas Stars forcing the issue offensively, all thanks in part to Pete DeBoer and his system, a system that players have clearly bought into. One of the newest members, or actually the newest member of the Dallas Stars, Max Domi, recently did an interview with Sportsnet's Jeff Merrick, and Jeff Merrick talked about Domi coming to Dallas and what it was like being under the leadership of Pete DeBoer, what it was like joining the team. And Max Domi, who hasn't really been around all that long, all things considered, was very quick to point out how he enjoys playing for Pete. Everyone in that locker room enjoys playing for Pete, and it's a guy that is very easy to follow. And that they really have no qualms with in terms of his leadership or the way he decides to lead the team and run the locker room. And so I think that speaks volumes that even the newest member of the team feels that way. And I imagine that that sentiment is shared by every other player in that dressing room for the Stars. And we all knew that moving on from Rick Bowness was the right decision. But now I feel like, you know, there was kind of this thought going into the year that the Stars could potentially be entering a championship window at the start of the 22-23 season. And I really feel like now, regardless of where, I mean, we could see them win one this year. It's certainly going to be easier said than done and a lot of obstacles to face along the way. But the Stars are very clearly set up for success here over the next few seasons. And it's up to Pete DeBoer to capitalize on that opportunity. It's up to him to capitalize on having Jake Ottinger, Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Wyatt Johnston. You're going to be getting some new players as well. Logan Stankoven likely joining the team next season. I imagine Thomas Harley is going to be integrated from the AHL to being a full-time NHL player. Probably some moves in free agency and trades things of that nature. It's going to be a different looking team next season, but I think most, if not all, of the core pieces from this year are still going to be around. And so it's on Pete DeBoer to continue the momentum. Again, regardless of how this season ends, which hopefully it ends with a deep run for the Stars through the Western Conference playoffs, if not even further. It's up to Pete DeBoer to not let this be the peak of his time here in Dallas. I know he still has around 3 years remaining after this one, according to his contract. And we've seen a lot of promising things, but he has to find a way to continue to move upwards. And if guys continue to buy into his system, I think that very well could happen. I don't think a guy like Joe Pavelski just re-signs one more year, one more deal, an extension, if he doesn't believe that this organization and this team is headed in the right direction, because no one would blame him and no one would think differently of him if he chose to retire. But I think it says a lot that a guy who's been around as long as Pavelski has is choosing to come back next season, to take a pay cut and play alongside this team. I think that that's special. I think that speaks volumes to where he thinks this team is at, because I would trust a guy like him. I would trust his judgment of whether or not it is a team worth sticking around with, to see if they can not only get back to the Stanley Cup Finals, but potentially bring it home. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll shift our attention to a different conversation and talk about which Dallas Star and or former Dallas Star could potentially have their number retired next. More on that right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be cutting down the net. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Locked On Stars. All right, everybody, wanted to close out today's episode with something a little bit different, but something that's been on my mind the past few days, given some events over the weekend from the NHL. I believe it was on Saturday last weekend. We saw the Nashville Predators honor one of their most iconic players, arguably their best player in franchise history, goaltender Pekka Rinne. They revealed a statue in front of Bridgestone Arena dedicated to him to honor his time in Nashville. Again, maybe the most important player, you could argue, in franchise history. Certainly a cornerstone piece of the Nashville Predators organization. And, it was a special moment. It was a cool moment to see that happen for him. Although the game in which preceded, or rather came after the statue unveiling, the Nashville Predators gave up 7 goals to Seattle, which is one way to honor your franchise best goaltender. That's neither here nor there. But the event did get me thinking, who will be the next Dallas Stars player to get some sort of recognition, whether that be a statue in front of the American Airlines Center or a number retirement? And in my mind, it's a pretty tricky question to answer, because it kind of depends on what angle you want to come at it from. And really, when you take inventory of guys who haven't already been honored in terms of the Dallas Stars and their legacy, I think a lot of the numbers up in the rafters make a ton of sense, and they're guys who certainly deserve to be there. Obviously, there isn't a statue, at least for hockey, out in front of the AAC. I think Dirk Nowitzki's out there is very fitting, but that's for basketball and a completely different situation. But that's really the only statue in front of the arena. But now the question is, could we see a hockey one get added for the Dallas Stars? And what will be the next number that we see hit the rafters at the AAC next to Madonna, Sergei Zubov, Yuri Lettinen, just to name a few of the numbers that are up there, never to be worn again by a Dallas Stars player? And I feel like for me, probably the safest answer, if I had to give a for sure answer, I think it's Jamie Benn. I think if Jamie Benn retires today, I feel confident in saying that number 14 would likely never be worn again, and the organization would be looking to retire his number. He's played over 1,000 games, all of them have been with the Dallas Stars. He pretty much is number 2 in every offensive statistical category behind Mike Modano. And I think especially if he can find a way to lead the team to a Stanley Cup, if he does that, it is 100% happening. Right now, I'm sitting at like a 98, 99%, but I feel confident in saying that when Jamie Benn hangs up the skates, his number 14 will be going to the rafters at some point after his retirement. And maybe if you want to stick on the the trend of current players, active players, maybe Tyler Seguin. He's third in all-time scoring, third in a lot of statistical categories, or second up there with Jamie Benn, Mike Modano, and a lot of big-time categories all-time for this team. But he hasn't played as many games with the Dallas Stars as Jamie Benn has. Maybe, again, if the Dallas Stars win a cup, I think that argument becomes a little bit stronger. I don't know, because I don't think anyone would go on to wear 91 again with the Stars, just out of reverence for Seguin, but would it be enough to have 91 actually go to the rafters? I feel less confident in that one than I do Jamie Benn, but it's not just current players. There's historical players as well, guys that have been retired for quite some time. I think we've brought up this question before. Whenever Sergei Zubov had his number retired, I said, who would be some other players that you think could get their number retired? And I saw a few people say that they think Darian Hatcher deserves to have his number 2 retired, although it's been worn by several different players since Hatcher left the Stars, including guys like Jamie Alexiak and currently Yanni Hakanpää. And it's tricky because Darian Hatcher certainly does not have the most staggering numbers: 59 goals, 204 assists, 263 points in total. John Klingberg has more goals, more assists, more points. And I can say with almost absolute certainty that number 3 is not going to be going to the rafters. However, Darian Hatcher did something that John Klingberg never did, and that's he won a Stanley Cup. He won the Dallas Stars' only Stanley Cup as the captain of the team, and I certainly think that holds some merit, some value. And I know that there's other ways for him to be honored by the organization. I know he's going to be inducted in the coming Dallas Stars Hall of Fame, but would he ever get his number retired? I feel like if it was going to happen, it would have already happened. And I don't necessarily see it happening. And even the captain between Hatcher and Jamie Benn, or at least one of them, Brendan Morrow, 528 points and 835 games played, never won a Stanley Cup, never was even an All-Star. Darian Hatcher was also a one-time All-Star during his career in the NHL. He, of course, has the iconic game-winning goal in the playoffs against the San Jose Sharks in the 4th overtime. But I mean, you can't really retire somebody's number based on one individual play. Otherwise, we would probably see number 25 get retired for Yoel Kiviranta after his hat trick against the Avalanche in Game 7 of the semifinals a few seasons ago. And I don't necessarily foresee that number getting retired, at least not for Kiviranta. And so, I mean, there's probably some other historic players, guys that used to play for the team, that I'm probably missing. And that's why I wanted to bring this forth. If you're watching on YouTube, I encourage you to hit the comments down below. Let me know who you think would get their number retired next by the Dallas Stars. And these are guys that I think are much closer to it, either guys that have been retired or guys that are in the back half of their career, like Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. And I certainly think that there are some other active players on the team that at least deserve a discussion, although we're a long ways away from finding out if it actually will come to fruition. If the Stars play their cards right and we continue to see guys like Rope Hintz and Jason Robertson stay on their current trajectory, I think there's a discussion to be made that we could see 24 and 21 go up. But again, that's a very, very long ways away, and no need to dive into that now because they both still have plenty of their career left ahead of them. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you again for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Remember to follow and subscribe to the show wherever you watch or listen. We're always free and available, no matter how you tune into the show. You can also follow us on social media at Locked On Stars on both Instagram and Twitter, as well as my personal Twitter account at Dane_Lewis. But I hope you guys have a great Thursday. We'll be back here tomorrow with an episode getting you prepared for the games over the weekend. The Stars kicking off things in Arizona tomorrow evening, and then they'll be in Colorado on Saturday for a big date with the Colorado Avalanche, a game that could potentially be for first in the division, but still the Central Division points up for grabs. Two teams contending for the top spot. Doesn't get much better than this at this late juncture in the season. But hope you guys enjoy your Thursday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.